Hello, 5th graders, and welcome to the third and final part of our read aloud of our current history ebook titled The American Revolution Fighting for Freedom. So we will be reading the final part of the ebook today, that is pages 22 to 27, as needed for today's history lesson, Unit 5, Lesson 13, called Sweet Surrender. And that refers to the fact that the British end up surrendering or giving up the fight against the Americans, meaning America does win the war and win their independence. So we'll see exactly what events led up to that in the final part of the book today. As we get there, we'll quickly review some of what we covered before. Paul Revere's famous ride, the first battles of the Revolution at Lexington and Concord, and at Bunker Hill, George Washington becoming the leader of the American Army, and how he led a great surprise attack against the British on Christmas Day in 1776 by crossing the Delaware River, the Battle of Saratoga, where the French finally decided to join the fight and help the Americans against the British, the harsh winter at Valley Forge, where the American troops struggled greatly to survive, but were eventually helped out by this man from Prussia, called Baron Friedrich von Steuben, Prussia also known as Germany today. And thus, by surviving Valley Forge, the American troops were now reinvigorated, they were fully trained again, and they were ready to take the fight to the British again. So as we continue the story, we'll carry on with this part titled Sneaky Spies. It goes like this. Fighting wasn't the only strategy used in the American Revolution. Both sides engaged in sneaky methods in an attempt to win the war. The most famous and effective group of spies was the Culper Spy Ring. These men and women were patriots. They risked their own lives to secretly gather information from the British. Then they covertly passed the information along to George Washington. It was dangerous work. If they were caught, they would be hanged. In 1778, Washington asked for a spy network to be formed. He placed Major Benjamin Tallmadge, this man here, in charge of the secret operation. This became the Culper Spy Ring. First, Tallmadge needed men and women that he could trust, so he chose his childhood friends. Then they were all given code names. They also wrote in code, and they used invisible ink. They even hung laundry and clotheslines to signal each other. The ring of spies gathered information that helped Washington win the war. Once, they alerted Washington about the British plan to attack the French, who were en route to help the Americans. They also gathered information that led to the downfall of the American traitor, Benedict Arnold. None of Tallmadge's spies were ever caught. So here's a neat example of some written code that was used to deliver secret information to Washington, used by the Culper Spy Ring. This message, when translated, reads, "Clinton has sent a secret expedition up the Hudson to intercept Washington." Now, while none of the spies of the Culper Spy Ring were ever caught, some spies were, including this man, Nathan Hale. Caught! Nathan Hale volunteered to be a spy for George Washington. He was caught by the British and executed, meaning he was killed without a trial. Hale was known for his famous last words, "I regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." A true patriot indeed. Siege and surrender. British General Cornwallis brought his troops to Yorktown, Virginia, in August 1781. The plan was to take over Virginia. Yorktown was by the sea on Chesapeake Bay. Cornwallis was waiting for more troops and supplies to arrive by ship. Then he would begin fighting. But Washington and his army were one step ahead of Cornwallis. So there's Washington overlooking Yorktown, watching as British General Cornwallis arrives with his troops. Washington knew French ships were on their way to Yorktown. They could block the supplies and troops that Cornwallis was waiting for. They could also stop the British stationed at Yorktown from leaving by sea once the fighting started. But Washington needed troops on land. His men and French soldiers were in Rhode Island. That was 500 miles away. Would they be able to make the trek in time? Yes, they would. The American and French soldiers dug trenches and set up their cannons outside of Yorktown. Then they attacked. The British woke that morning to find themselves surrounded. They were trapped. The fighting lasted 3 weeks. Then Cornwallis surrendered, which again meaning he gave up. By October 19th, 1781, it was all over. The British could not recover from this battle. America went on to win the war. And in 1783, the United States of America officially became an independent nation. So while we can say that the United States was first born or was first created with the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776, it wasn't until the victory at the Battle of Yorktown that America finally became its own country, free from British rule, and thus would go on to become the United States of America, where we all live today. And thus, onto our final page here, which reads 13 Clocks. In 1818, John Adams wrote a letter. It was a very insightful letter about the American Revolution. He said that there had actually been two revolutions. There was the one that involved guns and fighting, the war. But there was another one in the minds and hearts of the people of the 13 colonies. There was an awakening. They knew it was time for change. They wanted to govern themselves. They needed a government based on equality, one in which justice ruled, and not a king. Adams wrote that this revolution was the first time in history that such a difficult enterprise was accomplished in so short a time by such simple means. He described the 13 colonies uniting under one cause as 13 clocks that were made to strike together. He said it was a perfection of mechanism. These 13 clocks striking as one were heard around the world. It inspired future democracies. It sparked a movement to end slavery. It inspired women to fight for their rights. Change was on the horizon for the world at large. And indeed, the American Revolution was not the only one where people fought for freedom and to fight to get out from under the rule of a king. The French Revolution happened not too long after, where the people of France fought to no longer have to live under their king and became their own free country. And for this box down here that says liberty, equality, and fraternity, the American Revolution proved that old systems could be replaced and new governments started. Other countries also sought liberty. In their 1787 revolution, the French declared liberty, equality, fraternity. And thus we have reached the proper end of our book about the American Revolution. There are a few other pages after this with some extra material. You can check those out for yourselves. But for now, we can now say that the story of the American Revolution can be said to, at least the book, can be said to end here. And of course, I hope we have a better understanding of how the United States of America was able to become the country that it is today. So thank you so much for joining us for the reading of our ebook. We'll see you in the next one, everybody. Take care. Have a good day.